Hello, FewCandy here, and welcome back to Solitude. And I thought for today that we would head away from our wonderful mainland and serenity that you can see here, out to an island to start developing our island network around Solitude. Now before we start today, I do just want to remind you to drop a like, a comment and a share on the video. And if you're new here, please do hit subscribe if you like what you see and you want to see more creative builds in various different simulation games, mainly Cities Skylines and Planet Zoo right now. So let's head on over to this island. This is where we're going to start, and it's going to be a two-part build. I thought we'd start with the main island village for today to add all of the infrastructure and some of the housing and things like that that we'll need to set up an island like this that's completely isolated from the mainland. And then next time we're going to be coming in with a massive fancy tourist resort on the other end of the island with beach huts extending out into the ocean and everything luxury essentially. So we're going to start with the opposite end of the spectrum today, and firstly, of course, the main thing that we do need is to make sure we actually have connections to the mainland. So we're going to be doing this via a ferry stop and also a cargo terminal as well, a cargo ship terminal that we'll be adding in just down the coast in just a second. But for now, yeah, let's get a big ferry stop in. And I thought it should be quite a big stop, not just the regular small stop, because I think quite a few people will be coming and going from the resort here, and as this is the major or the only mode of transport to and from the island, I felt like having a larger stop even compared to the size of the island would actually be sensible. So the way I've kind of imagined this resort island is that it would be somewhere that's pretty run down, honestly, and quite poor in terms of the actual neighbourhood on the island, and just completely opposite to that we've got this luxury resort. So it's the type of place similar to some places that we find in the places like the Caribbean, for example, where you can go to a big resort and there's actually armed guards outside telling you not to leave the resort. That sort of place, potentially. But also somewhere that you could leave if you wanted to explore. Solitude's quite a nice place, so let's say it's not that bad. But it definitely has a more run-down look to it and much more simple and less wealthy than the money that's obviously gone into the resort end of the island. So things like this little row of shops here, I wanted to include things like the tattoo shop and the bike shop and the more run-down looking commercial assets that we've used in Solitude previously from the workshop, combined obviously with this fish market right in the middle, which I thought would be quite a nice central focal point to the actual neighbourhood, the local neighbourhood on the island here. I thought they could have quite a bustling shellfish trade because there's a lot of that in the waters around the island. So that's really the centre focal point of our little neighbourhood village centre over here. And in and amongst that as well, I will come on and add a market as well, because I'm kind of thinking the tourists from the resort could come out of the resort and go to the local food market, the local fish market, and experience all those wonderful local delights. It's kind of how I saw this. So that's definitely going to be the main attraction, I suppose, to our town, is the fishing industry and the big marketplace that it has right in the centre, which of course we will come on to in just a little bit. Now this car park caused me quite a few issues, but I think we got a formation that I like in the end, and I do come back and put spaces in that, I would add. Now down here on the waterfront, I actually added in the Peter Green Cities shop because I thought it maybe looked like a little bit of an office Coast Guard type office. I'm not really too sure about that, but I like the look of it. And then in terms of services, of course, we want absolutely everything on the island so that we're covered. So I used the small police station, fire station and clinic that we have from the workshop that we've used elsewhere in Solitude. Just because I want that small local neighbourhood. I don't want anything too big or too grand or too fancy. I just want things that are on a budget. Honestly, that's kind of how I saw a lot of the buildings within this neighbourhood. That's what we went for there. Now the landscape here is tricky as everywhere else in Solitude, so I did decide to flatten out pretty much the entire town centre here. It's not a huge portion of the actual island itself, but actually I really like how low we got it to the sea level, so the beach just really is almost flat out straight into the ocean and not super long and wide. So it means everything potentially could be flooded. So you'll see when we come onto the residences as well that I decided to use a lot of stilt housing for this, just because I'm imagining maybe if there's a tsunami, okay, a tsunami would wipe everything out. But if the water raises for whatever reason, these houses are all going to get flooded on the coast. So stilt housing was absolutely necessary. So you might see as well, I left this little mound in the middle because here, this is a bit of a spoiler alert, we're going to add in the main entrance, main hotel building of our resort. So I'm not going to talk about the resort too much. We'll do that next time. But I wanted to make sure that we had enough room for it here and then it was going to fit in, because the resort is just going to extend out that entire bit down the back of the island. So having this little mound there in front of it almost protects it from the village. And you'll see that when we come to the end, how I've designed it. So down the coast and things, this mound separates very much the resort end of the beach from the local neighbourhood end of the beach. Now, in terms of the town centre, I am mixing in industrial buildings with all of the regular commercial behind there, because we need a bit of everything on the island to keep it functioning, and I think that would be realistic as well. So there's lots of dirty warehouses and that sort of thing, because clearly down here we're now adding in the shellfishing harbour and also our main cargo ship harbour, which again, unless we made it a pedestrian area and sort of cheesed it, we would need that. So we'd need somewhere with cargo ships coming in. Unfortunately, we still have the vanilla cargo ships, so they are absolutely ginormous, which is somewhat unrealistic really for a little village of this size. But it is what it is, and I'm kind of happy with those big cargo ships. I don't really feel the need to venture into the workshop for those. So I mentioned the stilt housing before, but actually around the main town centre and kind of in the middle of the island, I did just decide to go for bog standard vanilla housing of low levels, generally level 1 or level 2, because I thought that was kind of best suited. And I particularly really like these double little houses, one with the red and the yellow roof right next to each other, the semi-detached. They're gorgeous, they're perfect for my little island neighbourhood, so I use those quite extensively. And then I wanted the stilt housing really out by the coastline, so any of the beach housing, all of the beach housing in fact, is all on stilts. And actually you'll see a little bit later on when we go up into the mountainsides as well, I've also got some other stilt assets off the workshop which work amazingly on bumpy terrain. Recently discovered these and we're going to be using them extensively in Solitude. So just going back to the services, I kind of forgot that I hadn't put a post office and a bank in, and I wanted to get both of those in, being a tourist island with the main kind of source of income, I suppose, being, well, one being fish and one being tourists. I thought having a bank and a post office was really quite appropriate. Again, I don't know how keen the tourists would be to leave their resort and go to the bank in the middle of the, like, dirty rundown village, but it's there if they need it. So now we're coming on to work on our market area, and of course with everywhere else I think it was like really, really important that we use decals all over this area to make it really feel run down, give it all of those cracks that we know that we've used extensively throughout Solitude because of the heat of the sun cracking those concrete surfaces. But the overall effect of what I wanted for this market was somewhere that's really hustle and bustly, packed in, noise and boxes and chaos everywhere. Now the unfortunate thing is that not very many Sims visit these marketplaces, so when we come to the detailing time-lapse a little bit later on, you'll see me adding in a whole absolute ton of prop Sims just to bring this area really to life, and lots of prop boxes, rubbish, trash, things like that, benches as well, seating areas, just to really kind of make it feel alive and tropical. I've been to similar places in Sri Lanka and in Africa as well, where it's like, it's so chaotic that you kind of don't know how to move. We haven't really achieved that effect here, but it's a sort of toned down version of it, which is what I quite enjoy for Solitude, I think. You know, we're taking real life inspiration and essentially making it fit and work for Cities Skylines and for our own little designs here. So I really like how it works, and in particular these historical European market stalls, absolutely perfect for this sort of lower income, less wealthy area that we have here. And of course I forgot to mention the statue of Captain Jack Squircle is of course front and centre. I'm imagining he was actually an explorer who invented the rum, or a pirate of some description, but he discovered the island, that's what I'm going to say. So back here by our little industrial area behind our fish market, I actually decided to add a bus depot and a taxi depot. Later on I do add a shuttle bus route around the island, which I thought was going to be quite important for taking the tourists around. Like we do have a park actually, which goes in a little bit later, but also for the neighbourhood as well, just getting them to and from each end of the island, because some of the road networks are fairly disjointed just because of the landscape, so it may take a while to get around places, so that's really what that was for. And schooling, oh my goodness, we have a massive lack of it in Solitude, as I've mentioned before, so I thought it was pretty imperative that we actually have an elementary school on the island. But then similar to some places I know actually around the UK as well, sometimes you have to travel to the mainland to get to high school. So that's what I'm going to say is the case for our neighbourhood here. So there is no high school on the island, it is only an elementary school. But hopefully that's enough to help bring in some educated workers at the very least. We don't have any offices on this island at all, so we're not really in need of the higher educations actually here. We really just need uneducated and poorly educated. Obviously some highly educated for some of the commercial, but that's really the extent of it. So I'm hoping they can flock in from the mainland, or for the local residents, of course, ferry across to the mainland to get the education that they need. I feel like that's a pretty realistic situation. The population is really quite low. Like, we don't have very many houses at all actually by the end of this episode on this island. So even the size of this elementary school as it is massive overkill for actually the island's residents. So now you can see me getting in some more of the residences and planning out a bit more of the road network for our little village. And as mentioned before, it's really the vanilla houses with these stilt houses going up into the mountain sides, which are wonderful assets. There's a variety of different ones that I've chosen off the workshop for this. So firstly, you can see these type here, which are wonderful. And then there's these more boxy stilt houses, which don't conform to the terrain. So we use those quite a lot, and you can see the results at the end. I'll show them off, but they're really cool assets. We are going to use them an absolute ton everywhere in Solitude because of the fact that they don't conform to that terrain. So you could literally put them on a cliffside and you'll be all right with it. But there's so many more details to add in around the entire town centre, so we do come on to that later on in the video. But for the moment, I really wanted to get in a very crazy, very dangerous road network around our island to get up to the top of the mountain, or the top of the dormant volcano is what I'm going for here, to put in a little campground and a lookout spot right at the top. And then also down this back bit, which you can see me playing with now, to add a little kind of research weather station down the back. I thought might be quite a nice touch. But we are using just the very muddy, sandy, tropical gravel roads for this, which I really love. It gives such a kind of authentic, rural, tropical experience. So again, massive thanks to Strict Toaster and his See No series for creating these, because they are fantastic assets. You can find those on the workshop. And they just absolutely fit perfectly for the vibe that I'm going for in Solitude. So yeah, this research station, I just went for the weather station from the Natural Disasters DLC, and then actually chose this little European generic industry building to go alongside it, and that really is it. So I do come in and add a few more details around it, but really nothing special. I just wanted to keep it a small facility hidden away in the back end of the island was really what I wanted to go for there. And I think this is probably one of my favourite spots by the end of the video in Solitude. It's just really super simple and easy to do. So if we come onto the lookout at the top, now of course I wanted to have a major lookout point that people could actually walk out onto. So we do end up making this entire island a park area, but for the moment it's just up against the road, so that's absolutely fine. The views from that lookout spot out over the mainland towards the downtown are just fantastic. I'll show that at the end, but it's really, really cool. Really cool. Again, one of my favourite spots in Solitude. I had so much fun with this build. And of course alongside it we added in a campground and a little toilet facility for those who have managed to bear the scary drive up the hillside. And then I kind of battled with a few little parking spots around here. The parking decals absolutely just didn't work for somewhere so remote and rural. So I just went for a little curb barrier to mark a few spots out with a few prop cars to bring it to life. And that worked wonderfully. And then just went around shaping it with a little bit of the ruined brush tool, the 1x1 one, which doesn't kind of look like a solid square. And you can get really nice effects with that. So that worked well here too. And then we come on to the rocks. So I do a lot more of this in the detailing time lapse, but I wanted these rocks to kind of signify old volcanic activity, really. So there's only a few of them dotted around in certain locations, like it's old lava that is dried in certain places and flowed down the side of the mountain. Again, this all kind of comes together. So we have got trees and things sticking out of it just to bring it to life a little bit more, but that's really the start of it that you can just see right here. And this will expand out a lot more and make a lot more sense by the end, as per pretty much all my builds, let's face it. Okay, so now we come back down to this beachfront area here, which is completely hidden from the main neighbourhoods, from the main village centre. It's got this mountain backdrop to it, and it's facing out onto a beach which just goes out into nothing, into pure ocean. So these houses would probably be quite expensive real estate, but given the situation on the island, I went for, again, these stilt houses, which are just fantastic. I absolutely love them. Recent discovery. Yeah, I can't get enough of these. Perfect for a little beachfront like this, just in case of flooding or high tides and that sort of thing. And they work really, really nicely, dotted in with our jungle foliage coming all around it, up on this dirt track. Love it. And a lot of the balconies on these assets are facing out towards the water as well, which really helps because clearly that makes sense for the views that they're going to get in this area. And we just really finish it off with a couple of palm trees along the coast, and that's about it. So again, I keep these stilt houses very much coastal, so in the coastal areas, and transition to the vanilla housing in amongst that. And this just forms the end of it here. So before we come onto our little mound that separates the village from the resort here, that's the end of the public beach access, I suppose. So coming on to the mountain residences, again, these stilt houses, yes, we'll see them at the end, but just fantastic the fact that we can have the terrain falling away underneath them. And I come in the detailing time lapse and cover this all in undergrowth, so it looks very dense vegetation sort of underneath it. So it is literally like they have been built out over the jungle essentially. And then we have a few smarter, more modern, very architectural style houses right on the top of the hill here with some of the best views over the island. So I'm imagining that these residences are the ones for the people who actually own the resort, or the higher ups. And I'm kind of thinking a lot of the housing could be for people that work at the resort, or indeed at the fish market or in the fishing trade. I'm thinking when it comes to the resort, we might add a small section for sort of staff accommodation, maybe somewhere, could make it quite interesting. Because it's so segregated from the mainland, I can imagine people coming in for weeks at a time and actually living sort of on site for the main resort. So we'll think about that next time, but this is the effect that we're going for here. Lots of these sort of modern stilt housing, although they're small houses. They're small houses, so I think they're kind of small enough that they can fit into the vibe of our island. So now, just before we come on to detailing, I'm going to finish off by adding in some of this path network for our park area. So I do add a few nature reserve props and buildings along this, but I wanted to make sure we had quite an extensive path network around the back of the island so that visitors or locals could enjoy some of the flavour of the jungle out here. And just coming onto this little end of the path here, I actually thought it would be kind of cute to add in a small pier with a few boats along it, again just for locals really, so nothing big, nothing special, only a handful of boats down here. A very hidden place that only the locals know about is what I'm imagining for this, with a few sort of smaller boats, no big fancy motorboats or anything like that you would find in kind of the typical marina. That's definitely not the vibe of this island, just some much smaller, more rundown boats for here. And so I like how this turns out in the end. And then we do just come in with a few lookout towers and nature reserve props, because I do want people to walk around these paths, and that's the trouble when you're putting in loads of props, they won't go towards them. So I wanted a reason for people to walk here, so we had to have some of these buildings, even though like the one down by the boats probably looks a little bit out of place, for example, but it works in the end. And then we come to this ridiculously steep path, and I decided to change part of it to a bridge so that you could walk over this very rickety old nature reserve bridge over a canyon underneath. I won't say too much about this because it comes together in the detailing, but I really like this. It would be like my dream walk, honestly, to walk up this mountainside and up this hillside here. So yeah, a lot of fun. But anyway, I'm going to shut up now and leave you with the final details, which is a lot, I will admit. And then we'll come back at the end and talk about what we've done. So let's take a little look around, shall we? Yeah, I love this. Got to be one of my favourite builds in Solitude actually so far, because it's just a little bit of everything, really. So like here we've got these shops with a bit of trash. Of course the concrete's all ruined, this being quite a poor town here. The post office on the corner, looking a little bit nicer. Nice and close to the touristy resort, so they can head there for their postcards, whatever they're sending back home. Yeah, loving this. All the neighbourhoods, I've kind of gone around. I didn't show this actually in the time-lapse, but I've done just a bit of tree work and a bit of surface paint to tidy up driveways and things like that, and kind of bushed them all in ultimately all around the whole plot. So yeah, pleased with that. Things like this, just absolutely love how this came out with all the little prop work here. Just a very simple storage yard under this completely open, non-sheltered shelter. I quite like the effect of that. Of course the taxis and the bus depot over here working really nicely. And we have put in a bus line as well, so you can see these little mini bus shuttle buses, which essentially just run down from the fishing harbour over here, through the town, and then up slightly onto the hill this side. They don't go all the way to the top, they don't go to the weather station on the other side. Yeah, just through the town, basically, to help people get around. I don't think the usage is particularly good, but it's a nice little thing to have, and I think when it comes to the resort we'll definitely add in a resort shuttle line to get people to and back from the town, or to and back from the ferry stop, should we say, so they're not having to walk through the dodgy local town if we're going for one of those Caribbean style resorts over here. So yeah, the marketplace. Tons and tons and tons of Sims just to bring it to life, and it's a shame they're not animated and moving around and the hustle and bustle, but no one was really visiting this and I needed it to feel a little bit more alive. So from a still point of view, it's much better like this with all these Sims just dotted around, and that took a surprisingly long amount of time. We'll add. But yeah, really liking how the fish market has blended in here as well. Just, yeah, lots of ruined texture absolutely everywhere. I also decided to drop in a couple of random trolleys here or there. Like people had left them from these supermarkets out the front here, so yeah. The elementary school's fitted in really well, and it's actually pretty much full. So there's a lot of people coming over from the mainland to come to this elementary school. We definitely need more education. We need some high density elementary and high school education around the downtown area, because that's really the area that's lacking. So we will do that at some point, and then hopefully that will rescue this poor little elementary school over here somewhat. But yeah, loving these little views down the road. We come right down to street level out onto the bank, so we've got a bit of a sandbank here, and then when it starts to flatten up is where I've put some of those beach props, the sim props, out on the beach enjoying the sunshine over here. There's someone actually walking around our little sandcastles, which is quite nice, and these benches are functional too, so we do have people coming and going from these benches, which is really lovely to see. Little boy with his teddy there. I'm wondering where his parents are, but there we go. Of course we've got the police yard back here, the fire station. Yeah, just everything sort of blends in really nicely. This hidden little pathway going back through here as well I quite like, although it doesn't get a huge amount of use. There's quite a few Sims coming and going on the ferry, but there's not very many people really walking around at this point. I'm hoping once we get all the resort items in, the island in general will become a little bit busier. But yeah, I like how the cargo harbour is sitting, really kind of very rudimentary. I'm actually now looking at it and thinking we probably should have done some ploppable surface to line this back up to the bank, but I'm not sure why it's flashing there either. But there we go. But otherwise, yeah, just tiny. That's all it really needs to do is serve the small amount of residents and the resort out on this town, so I think it's big enough. And then yeah, really liking views like this with these houses coming up the hillside on the muddy, dirty road, all surrounded by that jungle around the cliffs. So yeah, very much enjoying that. And then of course the big park, which does have a few little buildings around, so we do get Sims coming and going here and there, but it's not super busy because there's not a huge amount of stuff. It's more of a decoration than a tourist park. I'm thinking that locals know where this is, and then they come down here to use this and to use their boats rather than actually it being a tourist spot. Of course we've got the little weather station down here too. Now I didn't do any prop work around this. I kind of didn't think it was needed. It was really just decals, just to give that muddy, watery effect of the huge puddle in the middle there. Yeah, loving this, and these roads are super fun to do a first person on. They're actually not too steep. Like, you come down here, we probably need some safety barrier here, but I'm thinking like on an island like this, they wouldn't have the budget for that. So it would just be one of the world's most dangerous roads as you come up here. And these do exist in the world as well. Not every road has a safety barrier on. So I feel like here that would be unrealistic. And of course then we come up to the campsite at the top where I've just added in a few extra tents, a few more bushes, these random makeshift car parking spaces here. And then we get the view out onto the mainland, which I think once this is all sort of filled out around here with the downtown and the sprawl kind of heading back up into the hills, probably more farmland or forestry and that sort of thing in the background, this is going to look awesome. Yeah, it's going to look really awesome. So very, very pleased with that indeed. I added in these rocks to kind of make it look like volcanic activity, really old volcanic activity kind of flowed down the hill in certain places. And I really love this bridge as well. You can imagine people walking over this canyon, and this is kind of carved out from where the lava originally came down. It's obviously now a dormant volcano, but at some point the lava came down here and it's all dried, and that's what we're getting there. Yeah, just super loving it. These beach houses as well, the stilt houses work so well. This just feels like a really nice, quiet locals road with an absolutely stunning, beautiful beach just for the locals. Like tourists wouldn't come here, they'd stick to the resort beaches down the other end when we come to do that. Yeah, it's all come together. I think the stilt houses as well are an interesting effect. Like this almost looks like it could be a sort of holiday resort. I love these poking up much higher up as well over the top of these ones, but I think it's more of a housing development that someone's come onto the island and decided to develop these stilt housing because of the landscape around it. It was necessary. So yeah, there we go. And yeah, you can see the ferry line's really, really nice and busy as they float across the water into the ferry. The height of it's not too bad. Like, yeah, it's all right, but ferries don't go close enough to the actual piers with this design, which is the main issue there. But yeah, liking how busy this is. We do get quite a few people coming and going from here, and that will be even more so when we come to work on our resort down the other side. So for today, that is going to be it. But if you have enjoyed the episode, likes, comments and shares are greatly appreciated. And let me know name suggestions for our island and our resort that's coming up. We need some really cool, funky names for this, so please let me know that in the comments below. But that's all from me for now, so thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned for the cinematics, and I will catch you again next time. Bye bye!